Good day, ma'am, and good day, classmates. I am Shelly Eugenio, and the topic that we will be discussing is about ethical and social issues in information systems. Before we proceed to the discussion, I would like to represent my group mates, Mr. Herwin Eribal, Mr. Jericho Evangelista, Miss Jennifer Flores, Miss Asmin Gandawali, Miss Marjorie Gicoso, Mr. Don Candido Gonzalez, and Miss Christine Gonzalez. Thank you. So this is the scope of our topic. First, describe ethical reasoning, social and political issues raised by the information systems. Principles of beneficence, behave ethically guided by the principles of conduct, step guide to ethical decision-making model or Sean Taylor model, apply the knowledge and skills in the protection of individual privacy and intellectual property. First question, what ethical, social, and political issues are raised by the information systems? Number 2, what specific principles for conduct can be used to guide ethical decision? And for the number 3, why do contemporary information systems, technology, and the internet pose challenges to the protection of individual privacy and intellectual property? Good day, I am Shelly Eugenio and this is my topic, the ethical, social, and political issues raised by the information systems. The following moral dimensions are raised by information systems as major ethical, social, and political challenges. The 5 moral dimensions are information rights and obligations, property rights and obligations, accountability and control, system quality, and quality of life. So the first dimension is information rights and obligations, which is the legal standards for handling and reusing information are covered under information rights. It strikes a balance between open access to information and the protection of personal privacy and property rights. Other aspects of information policy, such as information security and records management, are strongly related to information rights policies. When handling and reusing information, particularly personal data, we must all follow the law and university regulations. Next moral dimensions is property rights and responsibilities. It is a software licensing, ownership of firm data and facilities, ownership of software generated by employees on company hardware, and software copyrights are all topics that should be covered in a code. Contractual interactions with third parties should also have certain restrictions. For example, houses, automobiles, books, and cell phones are all in short supply. Non-human animals such as dogs, cats, horses, and birds, inventions, ideas, and words are examples of intellectual property. Next is the accountability and control. In order to interpret accountability data, comparison and control mechanisms are required. People must be able to obtain and comprehend information in order to hold public officials responsible. They must also have the necessary authority. Next is the system quality. In system quality, it refers to the overall quality of the information systems processing, which includes software and data components, and is a measure of how technically sound the system is. And the last is the quality of life. Personal and professional lives have been impacted by information systems. In the workplace, information technology can be utilized to automate repetitive processes and give workers more autonomy, or they can be used to remove occupations without consideration and subject the remaining labor to widespread electronic surveillance. Next is key technology trends that raise ethical issues. Information technology came before ethical considerations. Despite this, information technology has raised ethical questions, taxed current social systems, and rendered some laws outdated or significantly hampered. These ethical concerns are caused by 4 major technical trends. First is doubling of computer power. More firms are relying on information technology for their key production processes thanks to the doubling of computer power every 18 months. As a result, we are more vulnerable to system failures and poor data quality. Next is rapidly declining data storage costs. Individual employee, consumer, and supplier databases have grown as data storage techniques have improved and the storage costs have decreased. These advancements have made routine invasions of personal privacy both inexpensive and effective. Next is advances in data analysis techniques. Companies and government agencies can now obtain highly specific personal information about individuals because of advances in data processing techniques for huge pools. Next is profiling. Creating dossiers containing detailed information on persons by combining data from numerous sources. And last is non-obvious relationship awareness or what we call NORA. It is the using data from different sources to uncover hidden links that could aid in the identification of criminals or terrorists. It also includes individual cell phone tracking. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Herwanel Aribal and I'm here to discuss about the principles of beneficence. Principles of beneficence is defined as the knowledge of what is good to do good. It is said that they are the instructions of our moral obligations, and at the same time, they work as the proposition on how to increase well-being. And with that, the questions, what is good way to increase well-being in the world, and how much are we morally compelled to do for those who suffered, will be answered. There are systematic rules that are somehow innate to us, which is our personal ethics that is imposed to us by the world. These rules are considered as national rule as it is perceived by everyone similarly. Also, there are rules that are driven by our subjective reasoning that in our very own perspective it is right or wrong. With those, there are principles of beneficence that is well known, and that is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is perceived as merciless against its compliers who, in being impartial and meeting extreme demands, can't be partial towards themselves or their clothes, or enjoy freedom of choice, things that are important for well-being in life. With this, it can be seen also as total fairness in order to achieve the maximum utility of one's well-being. These principles of beneficence doing full compliance on its compliers in order to maximize its use. And with that, there are three pitfalls that are usually happen in order to achieve this principle. Decisions. Decisions are what we come up to in order to do something. And with utilitarianism, should be the most good and best decision. This includes best consequences and calculating what or how the best decisions would be in a blur. In a blur in a sense that we don't know what is the total outcome, but this is still considered as the best decision, and that should be made accordingly to the calculations and rationalizations. And for that, decisions in the optimizing principle of beneficence have two kinds of backlashing effects of utilitarianism. Actual decisions. If one were partial and gave more weight to certain interest, other interests could have been yielded more utility will not be prioritized. Hence, the most utility would not come out of being partial. Since it is said that it is very needed in utilitarianism that total fairness is needed, partial must not be seen in making decisions. Big picture should be perceived in order to make actual decisions. In contradiction to that, we people put what is more important in the line in order to be able to come up with the decisions to be made. This often happens as we are entitled to feel responsible for things that matter to us, which are seen as sentimental. Calculating decisions. To try to comply with the optimizing principle of beneficence, one would have to calculate the expected output of well-being of the alternatives in each decisions we confront. With this, tyranny of choice can be seen or be manifested in calculation or thinking of coming up on a decision. This is seen the certain of what ifs, or even some quite trivial things that make us stuck in a certain sport of making decisions. That's how achieving maximum utility is done. Impartiality, which is total fairness, somehow contradicts the essence of what is said of the principle, as it's somehow hindering the maximum utility with a variety of decisions that is coming up. Decision procedure. Calculating expected benefit for each decision. It is defined as the method of making decisions and answers the questions of how should we decide on what to do. In the process of making decisions, due to trivial things and what ifs, there might be something that will come up that will make such major changes towards the decision. And with that, on getting to maximum utility can counter the arguments against utilitarianism that implies that makes complying agents make decisions that make them miserable. Demands. The complying agents become miserable both under full and partial compliance. But there are even more ways the optimizing principle of beneficence takes toll on its complying agents. Compliers usually go through different things in life. There are compliers from different societal classes, and if given with the same demands, this might cause challenges to the people from lower to mid class. And having said that, there might come to a time that people will not enjoy the essence of life, which contradicts utilitarianism, which is the wellness of life. Thorborn Tanjo objects that there is no real loss of freedom of choice in utilitarianism. He says that you can choose to make helping others your life object or project. Then what utilitarianism demands and what you choose to do using your freedom of choice would coincide. Choosing what to do is possible, but it can something that might cause trouble as there is no way that all people choose what they want or based on their desires. Strong essence of responsibility does make it the way it sometimes. For this, I don't usually be lenient on his idea, but I am more lenient on Brad Hooker's what is said. Brad Hooker said that most people are such that they were to pare down their lives to maximizing the good life would not very rewarding for them. This is something that should not be judged fastly and cautious of what is in the process. People find this healthy for them as their demands that comes from inside us, with that physically, emotionally, and mental wellness of an individual should be a priority as well. It said that it is more likely the people or compliers cut down people from their life for them to focus on themselves. Total equality. An effective way to increase utility is to direct what generates utility to where it can be used most effectively to generate the utility. Total equality in utilitarianism is defined the same way as how equity is done. People will give something to those who are more in need. In this perception, you will not extend help to those who are just in need, but those who need it the most. Total equality is a cap for someone who can go. It is capped because it is when you will extend, it is designed where you will extend what you have to those underprivileged people. Murphy. He suggests a fair distribution of responsibility, that there are only limits on how many obligations a certain people should do. This is said from a perspective that those who are in most need should do something to do as those who help them. So, because they have more burden on how to help others, as they are the only ones complying. Hence, unfairness is observed. Demandingness objections asserts that there is a limit to how great a sacrifice morality, or at least principle of beneficence can legitimately demands of agents. Quality. Who sets a limit on how much can be asked of helping agents? It is more likely on how agents know when to stop helping. Thus, sets of limits consisting of four criteria of when is it okay to stop helping. These are: it would deprive me of a non-altruistic focus in life, it would worsen my life by a requirement grounding amount, it would deprive me of a good that is better than the alternatives by a requirement ground amount. It would deprive me of commitment good. Altruistic living is not really for the sake of being altruistic, but meeting extreme demands. It is said that it is okay to help if you are going to help them for the betterment and wellness, but it's wrong to help them if the results will just justify how people did something wrong turns out right. An example here would be the thieves. If thieves have lawyers that will defend them, the extreme demands lie on the thieves need to be proven innocent. In that sense, lawyer did not really had the chance to be altruistic, as his help is more on how to meet the extreme demands of the thieves, which is the to be proven innocent. And that's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Jericho Evangelista and I will be discussing the principles of conduct that guides ethical behavior. The first principle has an old age root that survived throughout the course of history, the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule stated, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Respect and kindness are mutually reciprocated acts that should be considered between two parties and not just one. Even in our modern technological world, we still have to treat others in the right way if we would have them treat us right. Second, the categorical imperative by Immanuel Kant posits that act only in accordance with that maxim through which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law. In simple terms, if the action is not right for everyone to take, then it is not right for anyone. One example for this is a talented man not developing his talents, because if everyone won't develop their talents, no one will ever become teachers, doctors, or artists. Third, slippery slope rule. The slippery slope rule asserts that a relatively small first step leads to a chain of related events culminating in some significant effect, usually negative, which simply means that if one cannot take the action repeatedly, it is not right to take it at all. Fourth, utilitarian principle. The utilitarian principle stated that it is a virtue to improve one's life better by increasing the good things in the world and minimizing the bad things. Thus, people should always take actions that achieve the higher or greater value, actions that would benefit greater number of people, and actions that ought to serve the greater good. This will lead us to the fifth principle, which is the risk aversion principle. Risk aversion principle suggests that we should take the actions that would produce the least potential harm or cost. We will be able to do this if we would follow the core value of medical ethics, primum non nocere, or in English, first, do no harm. Lastly, no free lunch rule. Everything that is tangible or intangible should be assumed to have been owned by someone, unless declared otherwise. Anything that serves as value should be assumed to be valuable to someone, and thus the assumed ownership. This principle will help us prevent from unwanted stealing or plagiarism.
Good day, I am Jennifer Flores, and today I will be discussing about Step Guide in Ethical Decision. So we have 7-step guide to ethical decision by Michael Davis. So ano bang purpose na tong step guide na to? Syempre ang purpose nito is to help individuals make better decisions in moral dilemmas. So first we have state the problem. Don't jump into conclusion. So we need to determine any ethical dilemmas that may exist. For example, something about this decision makes me feel uneasy, or is there a conflict of values or rights or professional responsibilities? And alam naman natin na yung tension is always present in moral dilemmas, di ba? So this tension is produced by the individuals involves competing interests. So etong interests na to, in turn, are supported by the moral ideas and beliefs that these individuals believe. So, determine the competing interests in the dilemma as well as their underlying moral values or principles. Take note that if you cannot identify any values or principles that support this interest, you are most certainly not dealing with a real moral dilemma. Kaya dapat alam natin kung ano ba yung problema para makapag-conclude tayo, and we could come up with a moral dilemma and we could come up with a good decision. So next step is check the facts. Check for issues and define problem. Furthermore, many difficulties dissolve upon deeper inspection of the circumstance, while others change radically. Some moral issues create controversies simply because we do not bother to check the facts. So the goal of addressing moral dilemmas is to put things into a more objective perspective. This is accomplished by obtaining all relevant facts. So yung relevant facts about the situation and ensuring that they are clear. So dapat merong clarity. So do you have all the information you need to make an accurate decision? What do you know about the situation? What do you need to know or understand better? So this step is important because it informs you whether you are dealing with a moral dilemma or maybe just a problem with perception, communication, or something else. So the third step is identify the relevant factors. Who are the individuals involved? What laws or professional codes might apply? Are they real-world constraint? So, dito sa step na to, dito yung mga maaaring ma-involve sa decisions mo. Sino yung mga magsasuffer? And sino yung mga magbe-benefits? So, for example, ito yung who will be helped and who may be harmed. Because alam naman natin na hindi lahat ng ethical judgments ay perfect. Taking into consideration how you feel and the outcome of your decisions will help you make better ethical choices in the future. So the first step is develop list of options. So be imaginative, try to avoid dilemmas, not yes or no, but whom to go, what to say. So dito what additional options or alternatives do you have except the one that you got thinking in the first place? So dito sa step na to, kailangan natin gamitin yung imagination natin. And sabi nga, avoid dilemmas. And dito, we need to look for more than a simple yes or no questions in making ethical decisions. Katulad na lamang ng gagawin ko ba to or hindi. Mga ganon. So dito din, you can identify persons you can potentially approach na makakatulong sa iyo na mag-provide ng additional perspective on the situation you are in. So you consider the positive, you also consider the positive and negative effects of each action on your list of potential solutions. It's also important to analyze how likely those outcomes are to occur o kung paano siya mag-exist. So the more options you list, the greater the possibility of coming up with a really good one. So doing this step, it will help you to expand the choice of your actions you can take. So the fifth step is test the options. Michael Davis has included various tests that may be useful while weighing one's options and judgments. So first, we have harm test. So sa harm test, dito yung tanong na would I cause less harm to others if I chose this decision over the others? So in this test, you will identify those who will be affected by your action, identify the impact your actions will have on these people. Syempre, determine mo din whether this impact is harmful. Does it produce physical or mental suffering? Makakaharm ba siya sa health, sa safety, sa quality of life, sa environment, ganun. For example, gusto ko magtayo ng baboyan, but I should think on the harm test na meron siyang side effects sa health. And alangan naman na magtayo ako ng baboyan sa city. So, dapat kong isipin yung environment. ganon. So, the next test is publicity test. So, dito yung mga tanong na, would I want my decision to be publicized in the newspaper? Would I want my family to know? So, a publicity test define a person's actions manifest essential elements of his or her character. So, what we do reveals who we are. So, for example, under this test, when you contemplate an action, you ask whether you ask yourself whether you would want to be known as the kind of person who would do this. So, for example, if your action were cowardly, would you want to be known as a coward? And if the action were irresponsible, would you want to reveal to yourself as well as to others as irresponsible? So this test express the approach known as a virtue ethics. So ano yung virtue ethics? Yung virtue ethics is less about how right or wrong a particular action is and more about the character of the person. Thus, in this test, the action is judged in terms of what it says about the person rather than on any effects that action may have. So the next test is defensibility test. Dito yung mga tanong na, would I be able to defend these decisions in court or in front of a panel of reviewers without coming across as self-serving? So, yung self-serving, ito yung pagiging bias eh. Ito yung a person or action done only one's own benefit, sometimes at the expense of others. So, example nito yung self-serving is a lie told to make yourself look better. So, dito nga sa test na to, yung defensibility test, dito yung kapag ba na-challenge ka na on this decision, sa decision na gawa mo, kaya mo ba mag-provide ng reasonable explanation for how and why you made it? So, the next test is reversibility test. Dito yung tanong na, would I still prefer my preferred option if it had some negative consequences on me rather than others? Would I still want it despite the consequences? So the reversibility test captures a central idea in Kantian formalism, KKAN. So the idea of universalizing one's actions. It is also the main idea behind the golden rule. Alam naman natin yun, di ba, yung golden rule. So positively, it tells us to do to others what we would have them to do to us. Ito yung common example, di ba? If you want people respect you, then respect them. So that is reversibility test. So the last test is colleague test. So dito pumapasok yung tanong na what do my colleagues respond when I describe my dilemma and provide this solution? What will they say? So dito sa step na to, dito yung kung meron ka bang colleague na yung perspective ay pwedeng maaaring makatulong sa'yo sa pagdesisyon. And is there anyone who could help you think through the issues and possible responses? And kung merong expert dito sa relevant areas or issue na pinagdadaanan mo, or malay mo naman meron kang close friend na same na situation na kailangan ng ethical decision. So at this step, you can ask a few trusted colleagues and what they think of the different options. So syempre, pwede mong itanong sa kanila yung mga na-list mong options and baka meron silang matulong sa'yo sa paggawa ng decision. So the sixth step is make a choice based on steps 1 to 5. So you have to come with a choice or decision based on the above mentioned steps. Because you must determine which course of action you believe is best for the situation. Remember the ethical judgments, especially in dilemmas, are really painless. In most circumstances, the best option may be the one with the least problems or bad consequences. Remember that even if you make the best option possible, you may still wind up having a meltdown over it. So the last step is review steps 1 to 6. How can you lessen the probability of experiencing to make a similar decision in the future? Explore how this ethical issue could have been prevented. So when we confronted with ethical dilemmas, you should ask a quantity of simple questions. These are frequently difficult situations with no apparent resolution and no right or wrong option. However, itong decision-making process na to will go a long way toward assisting all of us in making informed decisions that will justify our subsequent actions. So we should always think about the process so that we can come to a conclusion, make a decision, and take appropriate action. So all of these 7 steps in ethical decision are important for us individuals, for us human beings, to be able to make good decisions while taking specific actions. This will enable us to be good individuals, not just today, but in the future. So that's all for my topic, and I hope you learned something.
Hi everyone, I'm Asmin Gandawali and I will discuss the ethical decision-making model of Sean Taylor. The previous presenter discussed the steps in ethical decision-making. Now, doon naman tayo sa model nito, which is again made by Sean Taylor. As you can see, it includes alternate actions, and those are context or facts, stakeholders, and decision-makers. These alternate actions will be performed kapag na-identify na natin kung ano yung ethical issue. For example, our ethical issue is questionable use of company technology in a workplace. Now, nagwo-work ka as a call center agent. So, syempre, computer ang gamit doon. Ngayon, break time mo. Then, naisipan mo na mag-visit ng mga non-work-related websites kahit alam mo na it's unethical because the company strictly doesn't allow any employees to use the computer to check non-work-related websites like Facebook, YouTube, and such. Some employees think of it as a minor violation. But as long as it is a violation, it will always be unethical, or kahit hindi ikaw, kahit kasamahan mo, pag hindi mo pinagsabihan or sinita, you also violate the company's ethical rule of questionable use of company technology. Now, with this kind of ethical issue in a workplace, ano-ano ba yung mga dapat i-perform na alternate actions in accordance sa ethical decision-making model ni Sean Taylor? Pero before we totally proceed on this, let me tell you first kung bakit nga ba alternate actions ang tawag instead of action or legal actions. Kasi there are companies that might terminate an employee instantly once the employee violate one of the rules kahit unang beses pa lang na-violate. It depends on how the boss can consider the situation. Kasi what if siya nga na boss hindi ginagamit yung computer for checking his or her personal account with the company's computer, then ikaw na employee pa yung gagawa nun. That's a big disrespect even on your part as an employee. Minor violation lang siya like what I've said earlier. Okay, so going back dun sa alternate actions, if the boss can consider that an ethical situation instead na i-terminate yung employee, nagbigay pa siya ng chance by doing alternate actions or other options in response dun sa violation ng employee. The first thing that the boss did was to first check the facts or context of the situation. Gaano ba siya ka-harmful sa company? What's the reason of the employee of having an improper usage of company technology? Ano-ano yung mga future situation na pwedeng mangyari kapag hindi na itama yung ganitong action? Or bakit importanteng magkaroon ng honesty or integrity in order to avoid this kind of issue or dilemma sa workplace?
Kasi yung misuse of company technology, most of the time, nangyayari kapag feeling natin wala namang makakakita or wala namang magsusumbong. Not until lang makakahuli sa'yo is yung nasa higher authority ng company. Next is the stakeholders or yung mga tao na affected in whatever decision or situation that is happening inside the company. So, after nyo ilapag yung facts of the ethical issue that happened, the next thing that you can do is to enlighten the employee na nag-violate kung sino-sino yung mga apektado of what he or she did. For example, his or her co-employees. They are affected kasi kapag hindi na correct yung nag-violate, pwede nilang gayahin kahit alam nila na mali. Next na maapektuhan, for example, is yung manager or supervisor. Bakit? Kasi, pati sila pwedeng pagsabihan na bakit hindi nila chine-check or pinagsasabihan. And of course, yung boss, kasi it's his or her company. Imagine meron kang goal. Your employees are working 8 hours a day. Then you just want them to use that 8 hours to give their best and be competent in their work. Kasi it would mean a lot to the company. Kaya sa call center or BPO, bawal ang phone. So you could focus on your work responsibilities unless mag-break time ka sa labas ng company, nasa comfort room ka, and or may emergency talaga. Next thing we have is the decision makers, which does not only include the boss or the CEO of the company. Since we are talking about alternate actions, dito bago mag-decide yung CEO or company boss, he or she may ask other personnel like the department head or supervisors to help him or her decide if the employee could be given another chance or not. So after this alternate actions, doon na tayo magpo-proceed sa evaluation of impacts. Sabi ko kanina, yung mga maaapektuhan is yung co-employees, managers, yung boss, and even future situations. Now, if the decision makers have come up to choices na pagpipilian nila as best response dun sa violation ng employee, like another chance wherein warning lang yon and makakapag-proceed pa siya sa work the next day, or termination or maybe suspension. Yung impact ng mga choices na yan yung i-evaluate ng decision makers kung ano yung positive and negative impact nila, alin ba yung fair enough para sa lahat, and kung saan mas magiging disciplined or mindful ang bawat isa. Then after nun, dun sa last, which is to pick optimal choice, so na-evaluate na yung choices. For example, then decision makers decided to just give a suspension to the employee who violated the ethical rule of the company. With that, hindi lang yung employee yung nag-benefit kasi as the decision makers, you were also able to give a lesson to other employees na a minor violation for them might lead them to our situation. And that's how we use the ethical decision-making model of Sean Taylor in response to an ethical issue. Let's move on to the next presenter.
My name is Marjorie Ann Kenneth M. Gicoso, and I will be discussing what individual privacy and intellectual property are, why we need to protect, and what are some things we can do to protect it. So what is individual privacy? It relates to an individual's ability to determine for themselves when, how, and for what purpose their personal information is handled by others. Protecting privacy is the key to ensuring human dignity, safety, and self-determination. It allows individuals to freely develop their own personality. The right to privacy is also recognized as an enabling right as it facilitates the enjoyment of other human rights such as freedom of expression, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of assembly and association, and the right to be free from discrimination. In this way, it serves as a foundation of a democratic society. So what happens when privacy is interfered with? Interferences with an individual's privacy can result in many different types of harm for an individual, such as reputational damage, embarrassment or humiliation, emotional distress, identity theft or fraud, financial loss, physical harm, intimidation, disruption of government services, discrimination, and feeling of disempowerment. On the other hand, intellectual property refers to the intangible creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs, and symbols, and names and images used in commerce. Generally, all companies own some form of intellectual property. But why is it important? Intellectual property rights and registration allow companies to protect their core business and research and development activities while creating a stronger negotiating posture for cross-licensing and counterclaims. Intellectual property rights and registration also allow a company to block competitive products, dissuade potential entrants, and clear a technological path for the future market share. But what happens if you don't protect your intellectual property? If you don't protect your intellectual property by conducting the necessary searches for applicable registrations, your company is at much greater risk of infringement, meaning a third party could prevent you from using your intellectual property such as your name or logo. Alternatively, you may not be deemed the owner of the rights in your website or other work product created for your company by independent contractors, even if the work is paid for by the company. In order to prevent interference, here are some ways to protect it. Create strong passwords. When creating a password, think beyond words or numbers that a cyber criminal could easily figure out, like your birthday. Choose combinations of lower and uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and change them periodically. It's also better to create a unique password instead of using the same password across multiple sites. A password manager tool can help you keep track. Second one is don't overshare on social media. We all have that one friend who posts too many intimate details of their life online. Not only can this be annoying, but it can also put your personal information at risk. Check your privacy settings so you are aware of who's seeing your posts, and be cautious when posting your location, hometown, birthday, or other personal details. Use free Wi-Fi with caution. A little online shopping never hurt anyone. Or did it? Most pre-public Wi-Fi networks have very few security measures in place, which means others using the same network could easily access your activity. You should wait until you're at home or in a secure password-protected network before whipping out that credit card. Watch out for links and attachments. Cybercriminals are sneaky and will often compose their phishing scams to look legitimate communications from a bank, utility company, or other corporate entity. Certain things like spelling errors or different email address than the typical sender can be a clue that the email is spam. Check to see if the site is secure. Before entering personal information into a website, take a look at the top of your browser. If there are lock symbol and the URL begins with HTTPS, that means the site is secure. There are a few other ways to determine if the site is trustworthy, such as website privacy policy, contact information, or a verified secure seal. Consider additional protection. Install antivirus software, anti-spyware software, and a firewall for additional protection. You may want to consider cyber insurance, which can keep you and your family. When it comes to intellectual property, there are also things we can do in order to protect it. Register copyrights, trademarks, and patents. Copyright, trademark, and patent are three of the most common types of intellectual property protection. These grant you the exclusive rights to your creations, especially when it comes to the commercial gains of its use. Copyright applies to the protection of tangible and intangible creative works. You own the copyright the moment you create something if you did not register it. However, it will be easier to validate your ownership, especially in a legal dispute if you take your time to register your work. Copyrights expire 70 years after the death of the creator, but also can be longer depending on the nature of the IP. Businesses use symbols, designs, logos, and catchphrases as part of their marketing strategy and identity. It's these images and words that help a company connect to its customers. Thus, these need to be protected from possible commercial saboteurs who might use or copy the designs for their own economic gain. Trademarks do not carry an expiration date since you own the rights to your logo, symbols, and other branding identities in perpetuity. However, as an added protection, trademark owners are encouraged by law to file for a Section 8 declaration to confirm that the IP is still actively used. Patents carry legal protection that excludes others from making and distributing your invention unless you have given them the license. There are different types of patent process, and the conditions or requirements depend on the product or invention, so you'll need to carefully identify which category the IP fits best. Second is register business, product, or domain names. If you're planning to start a business with your IP, you can further protect your interest and identity by registering the business, product, or domain name associated with it. It will also help to secure these names, even if you're just in the planning stages of forming your business before others could come up with a similar idea and cause some confusion. Your business, product, and domain names are part of your brand. Even in cases of sole proprietorship where you conduct your business under your own name, it will still help to secure registration. They also gain legal protection that makes your business and IP a separate entity from your own person. This will prove valuable should you run into legal hitches in court. Third is create confidentiality, non-disclosure, or licensing contracts for employees and partners. Sometimes there is crucial information about your business that you should protect from leaking in public. For instance, you are developing a video game but you don't want the details to come out before it's ready to launch, thus it will be prudent to ask the game developers and other people working for you who have knowledge or access to the information or trade secrets to sign a confidentiality agreement to ensure the IP protection. Confidentiality agreements, which must be prepared by lawyers, bound employees, and workers to comply with your demand to keep what they know private. Otherwise, they will be legally liable for any leaks. Confidentiality agreements, also known by other names including a non-disclosure agreement or NDA, confidential disclosure agreement, proprietary information agreement, and secrecy agreement. Fourth is implement security measures. Nearly all business are conducted today using technology or the internet. There is an upside to this because technology may fuel growth, dynamics, and success of an operation. However, there are also downsides to using technology to conduct the business, especially when your company's IP is integrity connected online or stored in a system that may be vulnerable to hacking or file corruption. Thus, there is a need to implement robust security measures within the IP framework of your company. These include setting a password protection for all computer networks, using virtual network access or VPN, and establishing Wi-Fi protected access too. Lastly, avoid joint ownership. Intellectual property may be developed and created by more than one person, as in the case of a company that has its research and development team. Joint IP ownership, on the other hand, grants the control of the copyright, trademark, or patent to more than one party. With that said, every owning party may copy, recreate, distribute, or wield whatever they want to do with the IP without consulting the other owners. Thus, businesses run the risk of exploiting their IP rights in their joint ownership. Profits and benefits also have to be joint IP ownership, which may be creating complications for the business. While many of these issues could be mitigated by defining specific conditions in a contract, the bottom line is that joint ownership of intellectual property can be complicated and create more problems than protecting the IP in the first place. To establish this, however, the people involved may need to have a sit-down with their respective lawyers to draw out the proper agreements.
Good day. Right now, we will be discussing about the major ethical, social, and political issues raised by information systems. So what are the major ethical, social, and political issues that are raised by information systems? The first two are, first, the information rights and obligation. The next is the property rights and obligation. These two is applicable on both social and political issues. Both were raised by the information systems. The next issues are the accountability and control, the system quality, and the quality of life.
Good day. I'm Christine May Gonzalve, and I will be discussing the specific principles for conduct that can be used to guide ethical decisions. The 6 principles that can be used to guide ethical decisions are the following. The first one is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This phrase said that we need to treat other people with the concern and kindness that you would like them to show toward you. Since this saying has come to be the most famous rule, so it is called as the golden rule. It applies in any situation. For example, there's a situation where you need to decide whether you will spread the fake news about your suspected classmate as the confirmed theft in your classroom, or you will remain quiet and help him/her to find the truth and clear his/her name. Since you don't want to experience the same thing as your classmate experiencing, you will choose to be quiet because you don't want to do something bad that can happen to you, because you believe that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. In an action, it is not right for everyone to take, it is not right for anyone. Kant's improvement on the golden rule, the categorical imperative, act as you would want all other people to act towards all other people. Act according to the maxim that would wish all other rational people to follow. As if it
Where a universal law, Kant defines categorical imperatives as commands or moral laws. All persons must follow regardless of their desires or extenuating circumstances. As morals, these imperatives are binding on everyone. For example, "thou shalt not steal" is categorical as distinct from the hypothetical imperatives associated with desire, such as "do not steal of you, want to be popular." For Kant, there was only one categorical imperative in the moral realm, which we formulated in two ways. Act only according to the maxim by which you can the same time will it should become a universal law. It is a purely formal or logical statement and expresses the condition of the rationality of conduct rather than of its morality, which is expressed in another Kantian formula. So act as so to treat humanity, whether in your own person or in another, always as an end and never as only as means. The fourth principle is the utilitarian principle. It takes the action that achieves the higher or greater value. Utilitarianism puts forward that it is a virtue improve one's life better by increasing the good things in the world and minimizing the bad things. This means striving for pleasure and happiness while avoiding the discomfort or happiness. Take the action that achieves the higher or greater value. So in the utilitarian principle, this rule assumes that you can prioritize values in a rank order and understand the consequences of various courses of action. The fifth one is the risk aversion principle. The risk aversion is a term used to describe a concept where an individual is faced with uncertainty and they must decide how they will react to that uncertainty. Those who do not like to risk are known as a risk-averse individual. You take that action that produces the least harm or least potential cost. The sixth and last principle is the ethical snow-free lunch rule. Assume that virtually all tangible and intangible objects are owned by someone, unless there is a specific declaration otherwise. The phrase "there's no free lunch" means you don't get something for nothing or nothing. Once received for free will be paid in another way. The term comes from a practice in the 19th century in the United States, whereby taverns provided a free lunch to drinkers. Here are the example. The company has asked the employees to fill in extra work hours this month. When the incentive was paid out, there is no such thing as free lunch since the company gave incentives for the employees that will fill extra work hours. I'm very careful about making payments for my share of food when we go out because there is no such thing as a free lunch.
Why do contemporary information systems technology and the internet pose challenges to the protection of individual privacy and intellectual property? First is because digital materials can be easily copied. And also, digital materials can be easily transmitted to many different locations simultaneously over the net. Also, the use of personal information on many websites is not subject to informed consent and their privacy policies may not be strong enough.